cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
All right. Today on the podcast, I've got the founder of High Touch, Tejas, on today. And I'm pretty excited because his background was super impressive, even though he just told me it wasn't a linear path to what he does. So I'm very confused with how he landed in the spot that he's in. But we're going to get into it. But Tejas, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Jim. Really excited to have the discussion today.
Yeah. By the way, I see like your team is doing an awesome job of like setting you up on podcasts and stuff. They sent me your bio and I was like, absolutely, I want to have a conversation. Has podcast just been good for you, like getting out there for your business, or is it more so for like a blanketed PR move? But like, what's the thought there? Just
No,
curious.
Great question. So it actually has been pretty impactful for our business. Podcasts are relatively hard to attribute, but I figure that anything we can attribute explicitly and that means that is a good sign that there's probably a lot more traction than that coming from them. But from the early days of starting High Touch, there were a couple of podcasts in the software engineering and data engineering space that were pretty prominent, like Software Engineering Daily and data engineering podcasts and a few other general purpose startup podcasts that we reached out to, and it was really how we got our initial name as a business.
Really?
So just like overall, our marketing tactics as a business was like, let's not try to create our own audience. Actually, let's just try to leverage channels that already have an existing audience, whether it's a Slack community of data folks or marketing tech folks, or whether it's a podcast that already has a ton of listeners. We know if we're able to go on there and talk about what we're building at High Touch and our perspective on the market, then we're going to get a lot more traction and eyeballs, or I guess ears in this case, from folks that might be interested in what we're doing than if we were just able to share things in our personal network. So over time, we focused our marketing on creating that audience of our own, but we've still found that to actually break out of our bubbles and our following from like middle of funnel perspective and grow the top, it's just important to continuously be on these shows and evangelize what we're doing.
That's okay. You're about to trigger me to go down a whole marketing path, but I'm going to hold myself.
That's fine too.
Hey, that's really good advice just for people here. When you're starting out, yes, you want to build a community, your email list, and all those things if it's right for business. But you did this smart cut. It's like, oh, people are already here. Let me leverage that built audience. And then you could port them to yours or just build a good brand name. You mentioned podcasts. You mentioned Slack channels. Any other avenues you've gone down? And then second, what's worked well to like go in and make a splash? Podcast is kind of obvious, but like, how do you go into like a Slack community and all of a sudden be like this thought leader that people want to know about your company?
Yeah, I think every channel has a different approach, right? You have to think about your audience and what they care about and what's natural in those types of communities, right? So when we got started, there were other tactics that followed this general principle of like, let's not try to create our own distribution channel. Let's go to where the users already are. Another example of this is partner marketing. So from the very early days of the company, we were doing blog posts with, pretty significant real companies that were, pre-IPO or already public companies like Snowflake or DBT or Fivetran, et cetera. And the reason we were investing so much again in those is because that just like elevates your brand to another level where, that if Fivetran is writing pieces on what is reverse ETL or how should companies be activating their data with some startup called High Touch, well, they must at least have some customers or some reasonable traction. And that's the impression that you give off. But the reality is that we were doing that stuff from the very beginning of the company. So yes, there were other tactics that followed this principle of like, let's just ride off other people's brand. Then podcasts, partner marketing is another one. We even use partner marketing as an SEO hack. So for any growth marketers out there or demand gen folks, that on SEO, one of the most important things in terms of ranking the Google searches is the domain rating. So of course, over the long period of time, you want to build your own domain rating to be really strong on your own domain, like hightouch.com. And we've invested a lot and done that at this point. But when we're just getting started, if we wanted to rank on medium search traffic words that were like somewhat competitive, but not that competitive, we could do that way more easily by just publishing a bunch of posts with partners like Fivetrans, NoPod, DBT, and all the startups. And every marketing team is just looking to produce more content and drive more traffic to their website. So there's kind of a win-win on both sides. But to answer your second question, I mean, yeah, you really have to think about the channel and what will work for that audience. So when we go on podcasts, we try to keep it natural, talk about how our customers are using the platform, why we started the company, our perspective on the space, and just really focus on perspective. When we go into Slack communities, we might need to take a different approach, right? So we have alerts set up in various different communities for when people, mention words like Salesforce or Marketo or API or something like that, and there might be something relevant to high touch there. Even if it's not a question asking for high touch directly, it might be adjacent, or it might build awareness of high touch if we start responding to those. So we really go into the communities just looking to help people out with topics that we really, really understand, and hopefully have a chance to link them a blog post or a tutorial that we've built on our own domain for one of those topics. And it's a much more like natural approach that just meets the user where they are versus you can't go in there and just post a bunch of thought leadership. It won't be well accepted.
That's really helpful. Going where the audience is, and then like it's a different strategy for each one. And I'm telling you, I'm so envious of technical marketers that like had a very strong technical background that get into marketing. It's like you're playing chess when others are playing checkers. When I hear you say, "Oh, we have alerts set up," so anytime they talk about in Slack, the team jumps on it. And so very, very impressive stuff, man.
I mean, those alerts really started as just like you can open Slack, go to preferences, and set up keyword alerts, similar to how you can set like your nickname or something like that in Slack. Just kind of hack that feature and start using it for keywords in big Slack communities. But yeah, over time we've systematized it more and more and more. So
what else have you systematized? I can't resist. That's a really good hack. We're 6 minutes in and you're pouring gold out. This is fantastic.
Man, the other thing that I think we did from the really early days very well and still continue to do is just like make sure we're trying everything we can to capture every bit of intent that's coming to our brand and website. So a lot of places on the website that collect email addresses, try to capture that sort of intent. We use services like Clearbit Reveal to tell what domains are coming to our website, even if they don't identify ourselves, and feed that into our outbound motion. We have like a whole app called Koala that our sales team actually uses, built on top of Clearbit Reveal to facilitate with this. Super cool if anyone else is trying to get that marketing sales motion down pat. And then on the product, right, we had a product where you could try it out from the beginning. So you could sign up, check out High Touch, and we put that live just as a way to capture intent, even when we knew the product experience wasn't even that like self-serve at the time. I mean, now it's a successful motion where there's automatic billing and pricing and the whole kind of product-led growth thing happening there, besides our enterprise sales. But when we first put it out, we were just like, well, we just want to use it as a way to capture intent. And we would actually use High Touch, our own platform, to sit on top of our database or data warehouse and feed those signups and different product activities directly in Slack, so that us as founders or the sales team or the marketing team could reach out to those folks and ask them why they signed up, what they're doing, etc. So I would say the other thing that we do really well is just capturing and looking for intent at every part of our funnel, and dogfooding High Touch to do that in a technical way, obviously.
Right. That's very cool. Yeah. For people listening, Clearbit is magic. They even have a free version where you basically can see the domains of who went to your website. We would then have VAs figure out like email addresses and do outreach, but those are really people like, people like, who the heck is Tejas? Like, will you introduce him or talk to him already? So, what is, well, let's start with High Touch. What is High Touch? Can you explain it so anyone of any level can understand? And then two, could you give any data or insights on like the size of the company, where you're at in your growth phase, just so people really know what you all have done?
Yeah, 100%. So first, quick explanation on what we do. We do what we call data activation. So High Touch is the leader in data activation. And what does that buzzword actually mean?
He did air quotes when he said data activation. So we're about to, I'm excited.
Yeah, let's demystify that. So, I mean, it's quite simple. Companies are collecting all their data into these data warehouses and BI tools. So Snowflake or Tableau or Looker, and they're staring at it in reports and slicing and dicing it and analyzing it. Our thesis is that data can be so much more valuable if it's actually brought into the day-to-day workflows of every business team around a company. So particularly in marketing, I mean, that's our real focus area: marketing, growth, advertising, those types of digital functions that are just so data intensive. What we help do is just make it really easy for marketers to take any data in their company about what their customers are doing, any of that information from their data warehouse, and bring it into tools like Marketo or Facebook ads or Salesforce, where they can use that information to better target their customers, better personalize the outreach to their customers, etc. So it's really just about, activating the data that you have at your company by bringing it into the systems of action around the company. And we support about 200 plus of those systems. So, any SaaS tool, any ad network you can imagine can basically be used with HighTouch, and think of it as a magic wand that just lets you say, help me get this data there without any technical skills, engineering, knowledge of APIs, SQL, etc.
Okay, that sounds exciting. Will you make it even more tangible with the use case? And could we even go consumer? Let's say I have a Shopify brand. I have Klaviyo as my email tool or Attentive, and I'm running Face or Meta and Instagram ads, and I sell like t-shirts. Like, talk
Yeah,
to me around like a use case that would help me like with growth or marketing.
100%. So let's say you have a bunch of people coming to your Shopify store that sells t-shirts, and they're adding various t-shirts to their cart, but they're not checking it out. Well, in a typical world, I mean, I've seen marketers who are, asking for a CSV of all the users who, added something to the cart but didn't check it out, uploading that to Klaviyo, using it to trigger campaigns. With HighTouch, you don't have to ask your data or engineering team for any help to do this. You can simply tap into all the data that is in systems like Klaviyo, is in your data warehouse, etc., and just create those types of custom audiences, like customers who added something to the cart in the last day and didn't check it out, and sync that over to systems like Klaviyo or Facebook ads or any sort of system to target those customers, and send any other information you have about those customers, like what they added to the cart, the amount of things they added to the cart, how many times they've done this, when the first time they visited the site is, all that kind of information into those platforms that you can use it to target them and really personalize your messaging towards those customers. Something that, like, another big aspect of HighTouch is the omni-channel nature of it. So we integrate with every tool in the marketing stack, every advertising network there is: Facebook, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, you name it. So you can even do pretty cool stuff like, let me first try to email those customers if I have their email address, see if they'll get engaged via that channel. And then in the data warehouse, companies have information flowing back of, did someone open an email, did they click the link, etc. And if they're not engaging to email, you can then start putting paid ads against them by just syncing that cohort of users into a paid ad system. So just think about it as like superpowers with your data. It really just allows marketers to build these really data-driven experiences across all their channels without having to know any engineering or technical skill set.
Gotcha. So kind of no code friendly, allows you to move fast and kind of creating those highways of data to do some innovative stuff. Um,
Exactly.
well, first, like, and talked about the size of HighTouch. Have you guys hit $1 billion, $2 billion? Where are we at in the growth phase? Or are you guys venture backed?
Yeah, so we're venture backed. We recently, announced a fundraise. It's at a $615 million valuation. So not quite a billion yet, but
You're getting
we have the
close. My
aspiration.
goodness.
We're about 100 people. We're based in San Francisco, but we have offices in New York as well, and kind of a distributed team across the US, Europe, and Asia at this point for sales. And yeah, we focus on helping fast growing brands all the way up to the largest enterprises in the world. So companies like PetSmart, GameStop, the NBA, just leverage their data for their marketing. So take all the data they have at their company and allow you to use that in every marketing tool and every advertising tool, and really activate it to the fullest potential.
That's a lot of money. Do you ever and how you're at 100 people now? Where, like, how quickly did you get to 100? Like, when were you at less than 10 people?
Yeah, so it's been a quick trajectory for over the last few years. Um, I actually left Segment about 4 years ago. That's where I was at as my full time job, where I really got introduced to the customer data platform, MarTech space. But we only really started hitting the fuel and scaling up HighTouch in late 2020. So we were under 10 people in late 2020. maybe hit 10 around January, February 2021. So it's really just been 2.5 years of super aggressive growth. That's because we've just found something that's so repeatable across different industries like e-commerce, you mentioned, retail, media and entertainment, gaming, and companies across all these different industries are just looking for a better way to activate their data without relying on engineers or in-house pipelines or CSVs or buying huge expensive customer data platforms. They just want a new tool that can help them move fast and activate all the data they have in their business.
Yeah. How do you feel as you like close this round of funding and you have 100 people, like go through the emotions of like, first that's validating and super impressive and exciting. But then you have this flip side, like, holy smokes, people have trusted me with like their employment, like with their funds. Like, how do you balance or think through that? Or are you just a machine and you're like, I got it?
Definitely not a machine. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me and also my co-CEO Kashish, I think, is just getting the fundraising out of the way and being able to focus on the business.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's really a testament to the company, to the team, to the product market fit that we have and our customers to be able to raise in this economy at an upwards, very positive valuation and round. But it's really just providing us the responsibility to do something with that and to make the most of it is the way I think about it, and not just for our investors but also for the whole team. I really feel like what we're working on High Touch is solving a universal problem that pretty much all marketing teams, all data teams, and all companies face. And the importance of activating this data and the amount of data you need to activate is only going up across all these industries. So it's really our goal to make the most of it.
That was way too good of a polished up like CEO answer right there. It's like you've been there for a decade, but I'll let you pass on that one. So let's
Sounds
go.
good.
Let's go to Tejas before you started this, because I'm always interested. I think a lot of people listening, they're like, see this, like, wow, segment. Okay, cool. I'll raise a quick mill and like, boom, you're off to the race with High Touch. But we know that's not the narrative, right? Talk to me about you before High Touch, like leading up to this, because a lot of people want to make that leap and jump. And I think seeing how people do that is really kind of eye opening.
Yeah, 100%. So it was actually my co-founder and co-CEO who was initially working on the startup out of the three of us, Kashish. And he was initially working on a travel company post-college. So let's just say if the story starts there, is 100% not a straight shot between
Yeah.
between Segment and High Touch, but our perspectives definitely helped along the way. I was ready for something new, ready to start a company. That was my goal at the time. And I didn't, while Segment obviously had tremendous traction to that point, tremendous growth over the last few years, I didn't really feel like Segment was going to become the next Salesforce, right? I didn't really feel like the CDP market was actually going to be the default standard way how companies manage their data. But I also didn't know what the right solution was at that time either, I would say. And that combined with just my interest in entrepreneurship, convinced me to, and just the perfect timing. I think that was the biggest part of having a close friend that is, looking for co-founders and starting to work on a company, made me jump in and work with him on the travel company. Now, if you fast forward about, if you look at my LinkedIn, probably 8-9 months after I left Segment to work on the startup full time, something crazy happened in the world. So if anyone can't guess, it's COVID, right? And while we had some traction, the business definitely wasn't, 8 months in, wasn't at the point or on the trajectory where it really made sense to wait out this, disaster, worldwide disaster that ruined many things, including the travel industry. It was a crazy time as a startup founder where we had raised a seed round, we'd been through YC, we had started working on scaling company, and the metrics literally just hit zero within a week of US announcing the nationwide quarantines on travel. So we took a step back and said, okay, we have to make a decision. Do we stay with stick it out and wait to see how long this is, months, years? It could even be a long-term impact on the B2B travel industry, or do we just do something new? And we both decided that we wanted to do something new. And in fact, I think it was a blessing in disguise. We weren't really super excited about working in the travel industry after having gotten into it for 8 or 9 months. It's very complicated, very operationally intensive, very low margins. It's a huge space, but not an attractive one for us for a number of reasons. And we really wanted to work on something innovative at the software level. So this, COVID gave us this opportunity to take a jump that we wouldn't have had, the will to do otherwise in some ways, or the reason to do. And it also gave us this opportunity to bring in Josh, who's our other co-founder and our CTO now, who was working on his own startup at the time and didn't quite hit a product market fit, to jump in and for the three of us to pursue HighTouch together. And yeah, I mean, when we started HighTouch and we initially got the idea for it, it was a long journey of talking to customers. But actually, my initial experiences at Segment, I would say, made us actually see the opportunity of HighTouch as potentially something like smaller, or discarded as maybe a feature of a bigger platform, or too similar to things we'd worked on the past at first. It wasn't until I recognized that there was just this massive shift that was happening in the way that companies managed their data. And that, the cloud data warehouses like Snowflake, which just IPO'd the year we were starting HighTouch, was just penetrating companies of all sizes. And when it came to data, the data warehouse and business intelligence tools weren't the advanced solution anymore. They were becoming the default way companies would look at their data or answer questions about their data. And once I realized that, it was just like such a fundamental change. And we talked to so many companies that were using platforms like Segment or CDPs that were still really struggling to activate their data because they could never get all their data into a CDP, or it's too expensive, or it's too much work, or too rigid. We realized that there was really a need for a new solution in the space, and made the jump to found HighTouch. But yeah, it definitely, was not a straight shot at all. In fact, prior experiences actually sometimes make you feel like the opportunity is already solved, or that it's a feature of another platform, et cetera. But all you really need to make a dent and start shifting the industry, like we have started to do at HighTouch, is to find that wedge or opening in the market where customers are, very dissatisfied.
Gotcha. So it's like this wedge can come from, one, customers being dissatisfied, and or two, a shift in the market, a shift in what's going in the landscape, or maybe
There has to be a fundamental shift in what's going on in the landscape, I would say. SaaS is quite competitive, these days. So I don't think there's as much of a situation where companies are just sleeping on prod changes in the market either. So I think fundamentally, there has to be a big shift that you're riding, like we were, which is the explosion of digital data, leading to new technologies that companies needed to manage that digital data, like cloud data warehouses, leading to companies becoming way more advanced internally with their data, having data analysts, having all their data in a warehouse using BI, and then leading to eventually the way they activate data needs to fundamentally change, where you can't just put all your data into a CDP or a system like Salesforce and expect to be able to do everything you want with your data across marketing and sales and your business from there. You really need a more flexible solution that can sit on top of the source of truth at a company, which is becoming the data warehouse. So I would say, like, finding a wedge is essential, but to grow really fast like we did, there has to be a fundamental shift in terms of how companies are doing things, or in the technology landscape, to just really hit the fuel and accelerate.
Gotcha. And when you went through YC, it was with the travel idea, not with HighTouch, right?
For sure. Yeah, it was with the travel idea at the time.
Gotcha. And so one thing that you've mentioned is, I think a lot of people like want to do something really quick. I don't want to look over like a couple of decisions, like what to work on, who to work on it with, and where you work on it. Cause it's like, you chose a category, this wave that's riding very high valuations, great margins, great opportunity, as far as like data and SaaS, right? Like, great choice. The second is being in San Francisco, where that is the hotbed for it. And then you've talked about your co-founders. Can you give more color? Because I think a lot of people listening, they're like dipping their toes in the waters of like, oh, should I work with this person? Not if I should work with this person. Can you give more color on like why this has worked out? Assuming it has, it looks like it is, because you also mentioned co-CEO, because it sounds like there might be some overlapping skills, or maybe not. But give more color on like co-founder selection and how to like nurture those relationships so it goes well.
Yeah, no, 100%. So for starting the company, I always knew I wanted to start a startup, but a big reason I started at the time was the people, the alignment of me and Kashish wanting to both start a company and make that jump at the same time. That's just a rare occurrence. I've learned it's really hard to find people who are great friends with you. You'll work well together, but they want to also do something at the same exact time. So once I'd missed that opportunity a couple times, I realized this time I would jump into it. So big emphasis on the people and the founding team, because everything else about the business is likely to change. That's the only thing that really stays consistent and sticks the same throughout. The product, the idea, the business model, the challenges, the team, the rest of the team, etc. In terms of like actually choosing co-founders and figuring out what to optimize, I think the first and most important thing I would say is just finding people that you work really well with and really respect, like intellectually, and are going to put in the effort and grind and kind of share similar goals in terms of where they want this company to head as you. When Kashish and I started working together, and later when Josh joined the team, that was really important to us, all aligning on like, are we optimizing for something quick here? Are we trying to take the company really big? How would we decide on decisions on like when to sell or different things like that? And we were all pretty aligned that we wanted to really help lead a large disruption in a category. We weren't aligned on data at the time yet, but a large disruption in a category, and take this as big as possible versus do something like a quick flip, etc. Even though we were all coming from very different backgrounds. Kashish had recently finished school and his master's in AI and data science, and Josh and I had left Segment, which is a company that had just exited, but we all had the same end goal in mind for what we wanted for the business. I think that's also highly important. And lastly, I think complementary skill sets are great, but they're not actually that essential as long as everyone's sort of a T-shaped player. So we all have different roles on the team, and we're always bouncing around who owns what in the company, probably every 6 to 8 months, honestly, based on the needs and where we need extra effort and where we need extra fuel, or where something's taken care of. But what's really important is that I think all of us have the ability to jump around different parts of the business. So even Josh, our co-founder, who's our CTO, plays like a decently substantial influence in things like marketing, or jumps on sales calls to help out all the time, or we're all jumping around to different areas of the business, and we chose each other because we have that versatile skill set, versus people who are, for most companies, I don't think it makes sense to specialize on a very specific skill set when looking for co-founders, unless of course you're doing something that's super niche or R&D, etc., where you just need that very specific skill set.
Yeah. No, man, that's super interesting. Just hearing that. And it's almost like when you have these A players, it's like you can wear different hats and go down this different path. Cause a lot of times you hear, it's like, oh, you have the technical person, and then you have like the biz dev sales, like evangelist person. But it's like, there's other formulas that can work really well when like figuring out that A player.
Yeah. And ultimately you have to pick something, run with it, regardless of your background. Like before doing high touch, I had always had a technical background, product background, was on the engineering side of things at Segment. And then, for all of us, we've had to learn this whole new skill of go to market. And a lot of that's just been learning it as we're going, and aggressively being resourceful and reaching out to people we work with at our past jobs, or investors or advisors, or asking people, hey, who's the best at SEO that we can learn from, or who's the best at thought leadership or category creation that we can learn from. So it's there doesn't have to be a specialized skill set as much as a willingness to get really good at what the business needs, if that makes sense.
Very cool. And I'm always interested with companies as you grow, like these phases of growth. Like, how did you get the first 10, 50, or 100 customers, and how has that changed from like scrappy stuff to more scalable things? Like, kind of walk through like how that's changed since inception.
Yeah, 100%. So it was quite scrappy, I would say, for the first 100 customers as a whole. And we were able to get the customers from various different channels, and they were also in various different, industries, company sizes, etc., even geographies around the world, which gave us a lot of conviction in the business as founders. So I don't think I've talked about this too much online, but I mean, some of our first customers ranged from like a newspaper in Norway to that found out about us because I used to intern at HubSpot, which now became a huge company. And I asked one of the founders, Darmish, who's obviously super popular, to share high touch on LinkedIn, and then
Oh wow.
a random salesperson in Dublin, Ireland at HubSpot found that and reached out to us and said, "Hey, I have a customer who could use this." So there was a pseudo partnership motion going on back then, to just like using our network, asking our investors, asking our friends, can I speak to this person? Can I speak to that person at a company here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, all the way to triaging these Slack communities and finding people who were asking about the very problem that High Touch solves and just reaching out to them and seeing if we can help out with that. So it's from a variety of different channels in the early days, all mostly oriented or more around like inbound and word of mouth versus let's say more like paid channels or things like that. We just didn't have the repeatability or the bandwidth to really invest in those things. And we really wanted to focus on, were we able to create a company where customers would come to us. Obviously that shifts over time, but it's really important to us in the early days because we thought that was essential for getting a fast growth rate. But it was, I would say, quite a diverse number of channels. We were really looking again where the customers are and where the eyeballs are, and just trying to be slotted there. So I think I'd really go back to the first statement I made on this podcast, which is that when you're getting started and trying to build your name out and get those initial customers, it's really valuable if you can just find what are the channels, what are the communities, what are the blogs that those customers are already listening to or reading or participating in, and just be a part of those versus trying to create your own audience, which is what I see a lot of startups do and frankly sort of struggle with in the early days. It's a lot easier to do that once you have some momentum.
Totally. Yeah. Because that's rolling a snowball uphill or whatever, which can be tough. I have two kind of questions I'm going to pack into one, which is I'm interested to know, like, where's your time going right now? Because a lot of times in the early days, it's like, I'm going to be scrappy. I'm going to like hand-to-hand combat, get customers. And then as you grow, you're at 100 people. It's like, oh, wow, culture, hiring, building systems. I'd love to know where your head is at. And two, like, how do you manage it all? It's so hard to wear different hats and transitions. Like, oh, I'm in product mode. Okay, I need to be in hiring mode. Any like, I won't say hacks, but I'll say hacks. I'm looking for tips, secrets. Like, how do you pull it off, right? Because that's where I hit a plateau a lot of times is the transition cost and wearing different hats. But yeah, would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, I struggle with this as well. I'm not sure if I have the best hacks or I'm still adapting to get there.
Yeah,
So maybe in a year I'll be better here. But
yeah.
what I would say is that a couple of things. One, it's not possible at the scale we're at to kind of run every function through like one person. So not only do we sort of divide and conquer between us three as co-founders, but we also have built a pretty strong, leadership team and executive team here at High Touch that just owns certain areas and just does it better than we would even do as founders. And part
Yeah,
of that is due to their skill set and their experience. And the other part of that is obviously just due to the sheer focus and drive that they can put on that one function. So,
yeah.
we have leaders in place for marketing, people, sales, solutions engineering, demand gen, engineering, who just absolutely crush it and just focus on the domain and frankly do a much better job than than we could. And I think that's kind of our metric test for if we have the right leader in the function. Are they doing a better
Yeah.
job than we could? And
Right. You want to
that
feel almost a little inadequate. They start doing something like, oh, that was significantly better than the way I would have approached it or something. When you get that been there, done that player, it's super energizing.
yeah. And if that's not happening, then there's a problem in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, the other thing I would say is just making space. So this is a tough one, but in the weekdays, frankly, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. or something like that, I don't have like much time to reflect or to
Yeah.
try to figure out something big on the product or marketing side. It's more running around, giving feedback, answering questions, having meetings, reviewing stuff. Um, Whereas it's just important as a founder, even when you're running, to figure out what are those hours for you that you can have extra space to actually like, take time to deeply think about things. Because context switching in the daytime like that just doesn't work. So
Yeah.
for many people, it's early mornings. It's like that for one of my co-founders. For me, it's evenings. There's like certain hours between after the workday ends and going to the gym or doing something to clear my mind, and the rest of the day that's just gets like super productive. As well as Sundays. So I just usually work every Sunday as like a catch-up day as well.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the essential things that kind of come to mind to me, is just like kind of accepting that you can't do everything, making sure you have the right people in place to delegate and run with those functions. Two is just accepting that you probably won't be able to make space during like the core working hours. Like those
Yeah.
hours are for you to support your team and to make sure you're accelerating everything that you're doing. Whether that's reviewing stuff, providing advice, helping out with it, etc. And just finding time to make that space for yourself to focus and go deep into things that is completely separate from those
Yeah.
hours.
No, that's super good advice. And yeah, because I'll put a to-do list down and then it's like, oh wait, I have 90 minutes of free time today to do those bazillion things. It's like, what world do I live in where that's even going to be possible?
Yeah, I think the other thing is just trying to knock out things when they come versus
Yeah,
create like really big to-do lists, and almost having a contest with yourself for things that are less strategic, of like how quickly can I get this done,
right.
basically. There's some
Yeah,
there's some tasks like sending an email, asking for an introduction, sharing something, etc., where it can take a long time, but um, the delta might not be that great depending on the time put into it, right? There's diminishing returns to some extent.
yeah,
Or if you don't have anxiety, and if you don't aren't getting too stressed about it, you can just knock it out super quickly. So for many tasks, it's just like, what's the absolute fastest I can get this done, and continuously pushing yourself to do that. And then for other things, it's honestly, you give up and trying to have this happen in the daytime and just find your own silo time to do that.
yeah. That's a really good call. My partner's really into GTD, like getting things done, and if it takes under like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you just do it. And I try and do that, but it's fine. I had this task that was like hanging on me for like a week, and then on Friday I was like, I'm gonna sit down and do it, and I was like trying to find all the space for me. The task took 11 minutes, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's so
Once you
stupid.
actually get started, once you pass that inertia, right?
Exactly. It's like I need to step it up. But one question I always like to ask people is, what is the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career? As you kind of look where you've been, where you're going, where you're at, what comes to mind with that?
Yeah, this is a funny one. I would say the nicest thing that anyone's done for me in my professional career is probably just like watch me like a hawk and give me really aggressive feedback on everything I'm doing across the business. So um, there's a couple people on our leadership team who serve this role. One that comes to mind is our VP of engineering, Corey, and he's always just like paying attention to all parts of the business and how we can up level ourselves at leadership and moving faster at execution, gaps we might be missing, and just like provides me that kind of direct, straight shooter feedback every time we connect. And even in the times when like go to market is the most important thing, and say not product and engineering, it's just that I just value that level of feedback, and like second pair of not eyes that I can reach out to, but proactive eyes that will just be like really aggressive on you. That I get from him. So overall, I would say like the best thing that you can receive you can ask for as a leader is just really direct feedback, because a lot of people will feel, even no matter how open you make yourself as a leader or how comfortable of an environment you try to create, there's a dynamic there that not many people will cross. So if you find people who will give you super direct feedback, make sure to invest in them and go proactively ask for that over and over, and explain to them how important that is to you as a leader, because it can truly be a superpower. So.
That's it's such good advice. Yeah, we did like a 360-degree reviews, and like I didn't get any reviews. I'm like, well, somebody shoot me straight. And there's a couple people where like I crave that because I've got blind spots, and so when you find that, it's like constantly like hit people up for it, because that's how you get better. So that's really cool. Well, Tejas, this is again, you're super impressive with what you guys have built and what you're doing. I mean, well done. But if people want to learn more about you, or what you guys are building, where can we point them?
Yeah, so my social media is rather straightforward. My username is really, my first name and last name. So Tejas Manohar on most social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, any of that. Not really on Threads if anyone's looking for that. But easier way to find me is probably just to Google Tejas High Touch or Tejas Data or something like that, and find my profile given the length of my name. But yeah, if anyone wants to chat about customer data marketing or just company building, feel free to reach out. Love talking about this stuff. And if anyone needs help getting data into their marketing technology tools or advertising networks, or using it to run like super powerful campaigns or personalization, then check out hightouch.com, which is just high, like the word high, or HIGH, just to be clear, and touch, like the word touch. And we'll get you started in the fastest way possible.
Yeah, I feel like people want to be early to this if you want to be black belt at marketing, as far as, because like when we do experiments around personalization and whatnot, it's insane what it does for conversion rates. So I'm excited to check it out. But Tejas, thank you so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.